Welcome back to Right to Rise Collective, a podcast where purpose driven women rise by turning their stories into powerful books and movements. Today, I have an incredible guest. She is a soul sister, registered nurse, certified nutritionist, board certified holistic health and wellness nurse coach, and she's got some really fun things to talk about that are on the horizon for her. Anna is a true bridge between science and spirituality. She helps women reconnect to their intuition, heal from the inside out, and reclaim their sense of well being, especially during the seasons of change, menopause, perimenopause. She is incredibly insightful on those transitions for women. And Anna came to me with an incredible story. I cannot wait to talk a little bit more about it and how she's showing up powerfully in health and wellness space and in other spaces. So Anna, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super grateful to have you on and can't wait for the conversation.
So grateful to be here. Thank you. Love the introduction. Wow.
Yeah. Did you know that you do all those things?
It's funny. It's like when you put it all together like that, it's just like, oh yeah. I do those things. Everything just kind of like comes together from different places. And it's like when you take your whole life and put it together in like two sentences, it's like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I know. I was struggling to even come up with your introduction because you have such a colorful, celebrated, and certified background. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about that background, where you're coming from, and what kind of work you're doing right now.
I always have trouble knowing where to start when I get that question. I think maybe it's easiest to kind of go sort of backwards, or maybe start like a few years back. So right now I am, as you said, a board certified integrative nurse coach, and that started as kind of, how do I say this? The launching pad was really the pandemic. I was a nurse in the ER during the pandemic. But even before I became a nurse, to be honest, I was always like, disillusioned with the healthcare system, like, with Western medicine in general. I had spent 16 years living in Asia. I'm half Asian. My mother is from Korea. And so I kind of grew up always with like that Eastern medicine and those holistic sort of philosophies. And so when I decided to become a nurse, I was already like, semi-skeptical, so it wasn't like the best place to start. But I was kind of, I was pleasantly surprised actually when I went to nursing school and we started learning about complementary therapies and so-called alternative therapies. And we did learn about herbal medicines and things like that. And we learned about the importance of lifestyle and nutrition. And I was like, whoa, cool. We are learning this in traditional, nursing school. I said, okay, well, this is really hopeful. And so there was we were able to kind of apply that. And I think it's because I went to nursing school just recently. Like I just graduated in 2018. So it's kind of new, all of this stuff added to the program. So I had this hope. And then when I put it into practice and I started working in the ER and then the pandemic hit, I realized like, oh, we're actually not really using that much of this, all that stuff that I was hopeful about.
Yeah.
And so I just, and I became very burned out with the whole system, as a lot of us did. And I said, this is not where I'm meant to be. I know I'm meant to serve others, and I know I'm meant to be in the health and wellness space. What's next? And so when I discovered nurse coaching, I was like, I think this is it. So I enrolled in the certification program. I did the INCA, the Integrative Nurse Coach Academy, which I guess is like the original, the OG, the Mama program, which I absolutely loved. It was so good. It was so nurturing. It was exactly what my soul needed at the time. It was a real big part of my healing actually from that experience in the pandemic. And so when I enrolled in that program and I started coaching others, I was like, this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah.
But we're still in this place where nurse coaches are not covered by insurance, right? Because we're not actually administering medications, and we're not diagnosing, we're not doing any of that. And so they're working on that, but we're just not there yet. And so we have to, as nurse coaches, be in our own private practice, and we have to find our own clients and patients. And I've always and I'm a woman in midlife, and I just always, resonated with women in midlife because that's where I am too. And I feel like we are an ignored demographic in the medical system. And we still don't know a whole lot about perimenopause and menopause, right? So since we don't know much about that, it's like, well, I want to be there to help these women get through this phase of life with the tools that I know of, and the ones that have worked for me, the ones that work for other clients, the ones that like maybe your doctor's not going to tell you about. So that's what led me onto this path. And now I work pretty much exclusively with women over 40, navigating this stage of life because, you know, there's so many changes that come with it: mental, emotional, spiritual, hormonal, all of it. It's like, you know, mix it up, shake it up, and like, you know, put it all back together. And so I'm here to try to help you put it all back together.
This really is where you light up too. You kind of start glowing when you talk about the women that you help serve, and it is a place in medicine that is still just so gray. This was the time when most doctors were like, yeah, she's just going crazy, you know, but now to have practitioners in the holistic realm who are going through it, who have learned different tools and modalities, and who are able to share that with people that may not know, I think that's a really powerful place to be in. I do have a lot of listeners that are women in their 40s. What are some common symptoms that you're seeing your clients come to you with? And what are some, not quick fixes, but what are some things that you can teach them to do on their own right now to help them move past some of these symptoms?
Yeah, so we live in this beautiful time and place where we have so many options, right? You can go the traditional route, which would be, you know, hormone replacement therapy, for example. But even with the hormone replacement therapy, it is so much better than it used to be. You know, the HRT of our mother's generation, like that was, it came with all these risks of blood clots and breast cancer and all this stuff. And so it was like so scary for a lot of women to use it. But now, first of all, a lot of research has come out to say that a lot of that isn't even true, that a lot of those studies were flawed. So, and then we have, you know, other routes of application, like you have now the transdermal patches, and those, you know, they don't go even get metabolized in the liver, so you don't have the risk of the blood clots, you know. So there's that. There's the hormone replacement therapy, and then we also have holistic treatments as well. You know, there's a lot of phytoestrogens you can take as capsules. Phytoestrogens being plant compounds that mimic estrogen and can attach to some estrogen receptors, right? So doesn't have, you know, exactly the same efficacy and power as estradiol, you know, the actual hormone does, but it can help relieve a lot of symptoms. And then we have, of course, all of the nutrition and the lifestyle adjustments, you know, just having an anti-inflammatory diet, getting more exercise, you know, spending time in nature, reducing stress. All of those things really, really help to relieve a lot of these symptoms, because I think what's happened is we've kind of blamed everything on menopause these days. You know, it's like, oh, I'm going through this, so it's just my hormones, there's nothing I can do about it. I feel like that's really disempowering. You know, I really, because a lot of these symptoms actually come from inflammation, for example, which you can do something about, you know, through your diet and your lifestyle. And so by changing the way we do things in midlife, we actually can get a lot of relief. So you asked what the most common symptoms are. I would say, weight gain is always one that bothers the most women. You know, it does. It's just something that, you know, we've dealt with our entire lives with diet culture and all of that. And so now we're in this new phase of life where all of a sudden we're gaining this weight for no reason, it seems anyway. And it's frustrating for a lot of women, you know. That's a big one. Insomnia is huge. Anxiety tends to get really bad in midlife, and that has everything to do with the fact that we have estrogen receptors in our brain, just like everywhere else in our body. You know, so I would say those are some of the biggest ones. Joint pain, you know, so seemingly random things. Like usually when I ask a woman, what are the symptoms that are bothering you the most? It's a laundry list. You know, it's never just one thing. It's always a bunch of little things. And they always come to me like, oh, I bet you wish you never asked. And I'm like, you know what? This is actually really common. It's okay. It's okay. And they're like, oh, I'm such a mess. Everything's wrong with me. It's like, no. It makes sense why you have all of these things from different areas kind of suddenly going awry, it's because estrogen is everywhere in our bodies. And
Right.
so once it starts to decline, it's going to affect so many things all at the same time. So it is really, it's normal for a bunch of things to be seemingly off.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I worked in, cardiac surgery, cardiac space, emergency cardiac medicine for years. And this really was the time when, when women were turning 40s or later 40s and they would come in with weird shoulder pain and facial pain, joint pain, and chest pain. And they would be having anxiety or panic attacks. So we would always put them on the table to do a cardiac test, right? To make sure that they're not having a heart attack. But now looking back and knowing what I know, these are very common perimenopause, menopause symptoms. The women are like starting to feel that depletion of estrogen. So,
Yes, yes. It's so
even,
cool actually that you were on that end because, at working in the ER, we would be the first to get them. So they'd come in with that anxiety, those heart palpitations, and they're like, something's wrong with me. And yeah, we do the whole workup, we do the EKG, we do all the blood work, and we don't find anything. So then we send them to cardiology because we're like,
right?
I don't know. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and it's very real. Some of them actually do have arrhythmias, where their heart is getting out of rhythm and they have these flutters, and we can see all of that from a cardiology standpoint, but when we actually do the angiogram, their heart is beautiful, their valves are beautiful, their function is beautiful. And now putting all of this together, I realize that a lot of that is just those fluctuations, significant fluctuations in hormones.
Significant, you're right, and very wild, unpredictable for a long
Yeah,
time until you actually hit menopause.
right. And then that underlying belief that you're crazy. You just mentioned that your clients are already coming to you a little bit shell shocked from Western medicine because doctors just hear all these symptoms and they're like, you're fine, your labs are fine, everything's fine, keep doing your thing. But when you have a practitioner that does understand, like you do, the different elements and this whole kitchen sink of symptoms that women are going through and why they're going through them, that in itself, just those women having a safe space to be heard and know that they're not crazy and that their body isn't betraying them. We just need to learn how to tweak things and help our body a little bit more during these fluctuations in hormones.
Exactly, just a little bit more support, and and it is really it is heartbreaking to see how much women are still getting dismissed and gaslit, and because doctors for the most part just they're not caught up to speed.
Yeah.
They don't know how to treat all of this because they didn't really learn it in medical school, and it's just now in the last maybe 2 years that
Yeah.
it's starting to become a little bit more prominent where a lot of doctors are like, oh shoot, it looks like I'm going to have to learn about this now.
Right.
I got to read up on
Yeah.
it. And then you have like menopause specialists kind of popping up now. And so, a lot of women will have to go to like 2 or 3 doctors and still get dismissed. And so finally they end up going online.
Yeah.
So I would say the majority of women I know get their hormone replacement therapy, if that's the route they decide to take, they get it online
Yeah.
because they can't get it from the regular doctors.
Right. Because your labs look normal. Everything's normal from this clinical Western picture. Vital signs and everything that we do in Western medicine, well, it looks fine. Everything's fine. Just get back to what you're doing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I would say most doctors don't even know that hormone testing is pretty much useless in perimenopause because our hormones are fluctuating so wildly. You can't just take one picture and decide, oh, they are or they aren't in perimenopause. It's all diagnosed, if you want to call it that, because it's not a diagnosis, but it's all determined by your symptoms, your history, and your age, right? It's like if you're over 40, you're experiencing some of these symptoms, more than likely you're in perimenopause. So let's go ahead and treat it as such.
yeah.
But too many women are being dismissed and saying, oh, you're too young, or oh, we can't give you hormone replacement therapy until you've hit menopause, which is not true.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of science is coming out saying now that maybe it's more beneficial to start it before you hit menopause
Yeah.
because of the cardioprotective benefits and all of that. And so
Right.
there's just so much to be learned in conventional medicine that it's, so I like to kind of position myself in between because I do understand how conventional medicine works, but then I also appreciate that it's still lacking. There's so many gaps, and also that there's a way holistically through diet and lifestyle to be able to support ourselves during this stage of life too.
Right. I think when you're in that place as a woman, you're confused, you don't know where to go, you feel horrible, right? Everything that used to work is no longer working. The diet that maybe you followed your entire life is, you feel like it's betraying you. You feel like your body's betraying you. You keep speaking about anti-inflammatory diet. Is there something that you recommend for women? Is it pulling out certain foods?
Yeah, so good question. So the anti-inflammatory diet really is nothing fancy. As you know, it's really just eating more whole foods, trying to get more fruits and vegetables and antioxidants, because estrogen is a buffer to inflammation. So once our estrogen starts to decline, our baseline inflammation will go up. And for a lot of women, this is what's causing a lot of those symptoms like joint pain and insomnia and anxiety. A lot of that can be, it's very much interrelated with the hormone decline. So when you start, removing some of those quote unquote inflammatory foods like processed foods and refined sugars and fried foods and saturated fats, when you start removing those and start eating more whole foods, it makes a world of difference, on your digestion, on your mood, on your ability to sleep, your energy levels, and a lot of times it will help relieve a lot of those symptoms as well. So even if you change nothing else but your diet, a lot of times you can find a lot of relief that way. And then
Yeah.
you start to add in, a little bit more physical activity, especially more gentle activity, because once we get a little bit older, we don't need to be doing those hardcore hit workouts anymore. If you want to do it, fine, but they're not necessary to be healthy later in life. In fact, it might be better not to do those and go a little bit more gently, and then try to do sleep optimization, all of that. Like once you put all of that in place, it's a world of difference, and I've seen it. It's absolutely transformational. Like my clients will have finally get 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep for the first time, and who knows, they start to lose weight, they start to feel a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, and it all feeds each other. If you're not getting the proper amount of sleep, that's throwing off your circadian rhythm, that's messing with your hormones even more and creating those cortisol spikes that never seem to go down. I also love that you're talking about maybe we've got to change our movement a little bit and pay respect to that. You owned a gym at one point in your incredible resume of things that you have done. And I think that was really hard for me because I have a very athletic background. And, if I wasn't an absolute sweaty mess at the end of a workout, then I really didn't feel like I was doing anything. And
Hmm.
that really was a massive shift for me when I started entering perimenopause was like, hey Leslie, we need to pull it back a little bit more. These workouts are actually doing more harm than good right now. So speak a little bit more about that and why we need to kind of slow down and do more gentle exercising.
I love that you refer to it as paying respects. That's exactly what it is. We have lived a half a lifetime by now. We have put our bodies through so much. So this is kind of the stage where it's time to just come back to ourselves, come back home and take care of ourselves and nourish and nurture. And that's the mindset that I like to be in is, more yoga if you want, more walking, going for nice long walks instead of sprints. Because I was the same too. Like you mentioned, I owned a gym, and so we did martial arts. Like I was hardcore into martial arts. I mean, that's like some of the hardest cardio you can do,
Mhm.
right? So we were doing martial arts, do the hit workouts. I had a class called Fight Fit, right? It was just like 45 minutes of intense, like so, and that was the stuff I came from, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved it. But like now, I absolutely love going for my hour-long walk in nature and listening to music. Like it's so nourishing to me now, and it feels like self-care. It's really, really good for my mental health. It allows me to decompress. So, but I also do strength training as well. But now instead of doing those, that high intensity interval kind of strength training, it's like, all right, let me lift some heavy weights, put it down and rest for a couple minutes. Like, very different kind of style, which I really like. Like when I first heard that it's better for us to kind of take things a little more slowly, I was like, oh, this gives me permission to slow down.
Yeah.
Because I think there was a part of me that I think there was like the competitive side and coming from that always trying to be thin, like coming from that, like do as much cardio as possible, eat less, exercise more, like coming from that sort of mindset, I think is what subconsciously trained me to love to do that hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
Did I really love it? I'm not really sure. I think I did. I think I did. But now that I have permission to kind of slow it down, I'm like, I love this. Like, I like to just take my time, and all of the science is showing that taking our time is actually really good for us now. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons behind that. The cortisol, as you mentioned, is one of those reasons. Like going out for a long walk is not going to raise your cortisol levels, but it will burn calories. It will raise your heart rate. So there is, aerobic benefits from it. Doing the strength training, of course, we need to build muscle as we age, since we lose muscle starting in our 30s, and muscle is our metabolic gold in this age, because we need it not just for our metabolism, but
Yeah.
also for blood sugar regulation, because muscle is what eats glucose, also for our bone density, all these things. It's all about longevity now. It's all
Yeah.
about like looking towards the future, and it's like how can we preserve what we have left and optimize our health. We can't beat ourselves up anymore. And
Yeah.
and who wants to? We don't need to do that anymore. And I think I love that. I love it's like, oh, we have permission to just take it slow. Sign me up. You know? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's good. I actually I'm really enjoying exercising now in a very different way.
Yeah. I This seems to be a theme with several of the practitioners. Most of my authors that come to me are medical. Most of us have stepped out of Western medicine and what we were taught as nurses to pursue a more holistic side of things. And one of the things I think that my clients find just baffling, and I'm hearing that more and more as I have these conversations, is embracing a slower lifestyle. It is okay to not respond to your phone. It is okay to not do these 15-minute hit workouts. It's okay to not pack so much into our schedules. And it is this reframe of, how can I love myself today? How can I nurture myself today? What does my body need today? And I feel like that for women, especially because we are on such a different hormonal cycle than honoring where we're at and our energy levels are at each day, and catering our movement and our macros, to where we are. And I feel that you're speaking to that. It's really just tuning inwards, kind of decluttering the task and in life, and slowing down, but also slowing down and listening to what our bodies truly need.
Absolutely. And we need to listen more. I think from a very young age, we've been kind of taught to stop listening to our bodies and start doing what we're told, and start doing what society
Mhm.
expects us to do. And so it has really made us fall out of tune with our bodies. And I think that midlife, because our bodies are changing so much, it's a great opportunity to just reconnect. It's just like start listening because things are different now. It's like, okay, well, this is our chance to realign and reattune and to start paying attention. And it's
Yeah.
like I love this analogy of you got your car. And if there's an oil light or something that comes in on your car, if you're looking at the dashboard and there's a light that comes on, well, you take care of it, because if you don't take care of it, you're eventually going to have to go to the mechanic. And I feel like we need to kind of take that analogy on with our bodies. It's like if we sense something, if there's like a signal, if there's a little light that goes off somewhere, let's put some focus on it. Let's take care of it then before we actually have a full-on breakdown, And I think that when we slow down and we are nurturing ourselves and participating in self-care and just really listening, then we have that opportunity to start sensing where something is a little bit off and giving it a little bit more love and giving it a little bit more attention.
Yeah. And I think this is genuinely what people want. They're listening right now, and this all makes sense. We grew up listening to the fat, sick, nearly dead doctor. And now people are waking up and, as a nurse too, I was like, why are people listening to this person? He's about to have a heart attack himself. These doctors, some of them are not the picture of health, and they didn't have the answers, and people weren't getting better, and we're living in a system that's getting sicker and sicker. But I do feel that we've reached this place where people are open to more holistic remedies, and they are listening a little bit more to the people that might have sounded a little bit woo-woo. And I am going to bridge into your book because I love that, but this is medicine that's available to anyone. We're talking about slowing down, getting outside, moving your body, doesn't need a gym membership, water, nutrition, proper things like that. And sometimes having a coach or a guide that can assist you in that, just with the accountability, is really, really important. You did touch on it earlier that we haven't yet come to a place where we as nurse coaches can collect insurance. But I do feel that people are interested in this. And so how do you feel like you are able to share this knowledge and serve people still as a nurse coach outside of the realm of the hospital?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't been working in the hospital for the last few years. So I've been able to fortunately work in private practice. So I do my best to share what I can for free, on my social media, and I, do free workshops at least once a month or once every other month. So anybody is welcome to join. And so my mission is to really just share as much knowledge as I can. I don't want to be a gatekeeper, especially when it comes to this topic, because it's just, there's so much misinformation out there when it comes to these hormonal changes, because what's happening is like, just like everything else having to do with women in a vulnerable position, there are people out there that want to take advantage of that. And so you'll see a lot, like online, I'm seeing all kinds of stuff about like hormonal balancing drops and like all these things that clearly don't work, that have, will do nothing to move the needle for you. But out of desperation, people are going to buy this because they just want to feel better. I don't blame them. I don't blame them, and so I want to, I like to share in my workshops and in all of the platforms that I have, whatever information I can, because the information is out there. It's just that I want to weed through it and tell you what's actually true, what's full of BS, what's not going to work, and be like, okay, here's the information. This is what I can do for you, is provide for you the information. If you want further support, like if you want somebody to walk you through it, I'm happy to do that for you. Then we can work together.
Yeah.
But I have no problem sharing the information. Like I said, I don't want to gatekeep. Like, have it, and if you can do it on your own, amazing, awesome. Take this to your doctor, take this to whoever and advocate for yourself. Here you have it. But, of course, like as you mentioned, the accountability thing is really important. Sometimes it's so overwhelming. A lot of women don't know where to start. They just want to plan. They want somebody to kind of hold their hand and walk them through it. And that's where we come in. And I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. That is a piece too that a lot of people don't understand. As nurses, we are educators. We are constantly educating, even in the hospital, making sure that our patients, well, if we had the time
If we
to,
have the time, yeah, that's
but we are taught to, the doctor comes in for 4 seconds, tells you what you have, but the nurse is really the one that's in there coaching you, talking to you, educating you, and walking you through that. People don't really understand. I think people are seeing more and more coaches and online people showing up and making a career online, but nurse coaches are really in this beautiful space where we are the educators, we are the bridge between medicine, but also this new model of just coming back to yourself and bringing in breath work, bringing in meditation. And I want to talk about another piece that is really, really powerful that you have hit on and you implement in your life. I implement in my life, and it is something that we are trying to educate people about, coming back home to ourselves through plant medicine. And I want you to speak a little bit about the certification and what you help people do with plant medicine.
Yeah, so plant medicine is oh so powerful. I'm a real true believer in that a lot of times nature has the answers. And I think this is why when we're searching for cures or something to alleviate symptoms or something to just help our well-being, a lot of times nature will have it there somewhere. We just got to know where to find it. And so, and we are nature, right? We are human beings. We are a part of nature. We are all connected. And so looking to nature for the answers, I think, is oftentimes one of the first places that we should be looking. But then at the same time, we need to be looking within ourselves for the answers because we know what the answers are. Sometimes we're too distracted, or sometimes there's too many options or distractions out there pulling us in different directions. So it's really important to always try to come back to our center. We do know what's best for us if we just listen and tap in and give ourselves that opportunity to do so. So what I love about plant medicines, and especially the psychedelic plant medicines, which you can call entheogens, hallucinogenics, whatever. You can call it so many different things. These allow you, well, first of all, they come from nature, right? They are grown in the earth. They're not manufactured in a laboratory. People have been using them for millennia in so many different cultures all over the world, right? They are there for us to use. And so these are beautiful plant tools, plant allies that we have that allow us to tap into our center. And when we ingest these plants, and I'm talking ayahuasca, peyote, mushrooms, the psychedelic kind, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, for example, all of these. This allows us to go into a space where we are able to process a lot of things, process emotions, process memories, process trauma, whatever it is that needs to be processed. The medicine will show it to us. It will tell you, okay, it's time for you to deal with this. And then, each time it will peel back another layer and another layer. Each time is different. You're going to grow with every journey. And so it's such a powerful tool. And anecdotally, you always hear one journey with plant medicine is equal to 10 years of therapy. And let me tell you, from my own personal experience and from what I have observed, that is true. That is absolutely true. I mean, I've had people, I've worked with people who have been in therapy their entire lives, have been taking antidepressants, have been taking anti-anxiety medications, all of the things. They were not able to process any of that until they actually had a plant medicine journey, and then boom, it was all, the answers were right there.
Yeah.
It's not the case for everybody, of course, but I have seen such amazing transformations happen in just one journey. And the fact that we have these plants that grow out of the ground that have been stigmatized and demonized and made illegal is just nuts. Yeah. It's absolutely nuts. But there are still, it is being recognized now that it's silly, right? So it has been decriminalized in some places, and there are still cultures around the world that still use it as part of their spiritual practice, and they're able to do it legally because it's recognized by their government that it's part of their tradition, it's part of their culture. But here in the US, and in the US we have Native peoples that have been using these medicines as part of their tradition and their culture for the beginning of their times.
Yeah.
So, so now things are changing. We're now in this really cool, very, very cool time
We are.
where things are starting to change. It started with like the decriminalization of cannabis, and then, it was started with like the medical use of cannabis. And so now, because there's so much research out there, it's absolutely undeniable the benefits of these medicines, that it's like, okay, well, we have to let you use it because it's just the research is just undeniable. I mean, for some people it's the only thing that works for them. People with
Right.
treatment resistant depression, like people with complex PTSD, people with addictions, people, with trauma, nothing has worked, but for them psychedelics have worked. And so to deny people that is it's inhumane. And even if you aren't dealing with these complex mental health issues, just to make your life better, just to be happier, to be able to tap into your center, to be able to connect more with whatever energy you want to connect with, we should be allowed to be given that opportunity with these plants that grow out of the earth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I had been living in Mexico for a few years, and I was working with those plants and, doing retreats and seeing firsthand all of this that I've been talking about. It's just like, it blew my mind every time, absolutely blew my mind how powerful these were and how healing they were for a lot of people. And a lot of times it was physical ailments as well. We're not just talking about mental, spiritual, emotional stuff.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it can actually help with physical illnesses and pain. I've seen it cure chronic pain before, and so we do need to provide access, and now it's starting to happen. So Oregon now has, made it legal to have psychedelic assisted therapy, and next is Colorado. And so that's the path I'm on right now. Is I'm currently in the process of getting licensed as a psychedelic facilitator in Colorado. So that should happen by just a couple months now. Yeah, it should happen by like
Ah,
June or July. And it's very exciting because it's very new. Everything's just all of a sudden like cropping up. And so we'll see what happens there. But it's a lot of beautiful things have happened in Oregon. And because it's done so well in Oregon, Colorado is able to kind of use that as a bit of a model.
yeah.
And so now New Mexico is next. I don't know if you've heard that. And then Idaho is next after that. Like, it's looking like a lot of the places, at least in the western part of the US, are going to be jumping on board and allowing people access to these really transformational medicines.
And as there's so much here. I
So much.
don't think either one of us realized when we stepped into this holistic coaching realm that we were going to be in this new frontier and kind of paving the way for new medicine. And it's not new medicine, it's something we're bringing everybody back home to where medicine derailed, really,
Yes,
right? Because all of our pharmaceuticals are from, well, they used to be derived from plants. So
exactly.
it it's not too far-fetched what we're doing. We're really just bringing people back home. But I'm curious, as a medical professional, how do you help educate people about this? Also, how do you hold space for people that are a little bit scared of this, right? They're hearing this and they're like, I've been told my whole life that this is not good for me, but I want to heal. I hear you, I hear these transformations, and I'm curious. So how as a medical professional are you showing up for these people?
I love that question because I feel like it's almost my responsibility to be in this space as a medical professional, because I can't tell you how many times I heard when I was in Mexico and I was helping with these retreats, people would inquire about what happens there and what kind of medicines they're going to take, and they're a little bit scared because they maybe they hadn't had those medicines before, or maybe they hadn't had them in a foreign country. And so when they would talk to me, they would immediately feel comforted because they knew I was a nurse. I was a nurse from the US, and they knew how I was trained. I really think that I'm very proud of the way nurses are trained in the
Yeah.
US. I think that the programs are very rigorous, and I think that we're held to a very high standard of integrity and ethics, and I am proud of that. And so and I think there's a reason that we should be, because it really is a really rigorous program that we do, and we're taught such great ethics, I think.
Yeah.
We're always the ones who advocate for our patients. I think that we're kind of the moral backbone of the healthcare system. I think without us, it would have gone to shit a long time ago. Like when I say shit, I mean much bigger shit than it's in now.
Yeah.
But so I would hear that, and immediately they would have this sense of safety. I think being around a nurse, because we do hold space, because we do care for them, but we also are trained to save their lives. It's like there's this element of safety that we carry with us. And so I think that that's a special opportunity to be able to introduce people to this. I'm not pushing it on anybody. It's like if
Right.
somebody wants it, that is 100% their choice. But I'm happy to be the one to be that bridge to make them feel safe enough to try it, because you have to feel safe to do these medicines. You really do. Set and setting is everything. If you don't feel safe, it may not be a good idea for you to do it. And
Right.
so to be in that space where I do make them feel safe, and I think that being a nurse, just the fact that I am a nurse, really lends a lot to that feeling of safety.
Yeah.
And I think that we have a voice. We have a very special voice, especially after the pandemic, and nurses were given kind of a bigger voice than before. I think that we are in a really special position, privileged position, to be able to kind of be vocal and say, like, look, people need these medicines. These are helping a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, let's decriminalize them. And there are a lot of nurses speaking out. Oh, you were just speaking with Odelia about that, about cannabis, right? Like, it's the same thing. It's happening in the whole country. Lots of nurses are speaking out because they've seen what it does for their patients and for themselves.
It was the pandemic that brought me back to these medicines and to these modalities because I was so sick and Western medicine was failing me and I was dangerously close to losing my life. And at that point, I was so desperate and so sick that I would have literally ate dog shit if you told me that it would make me feel better. But finding my way back to these plant medicines, and thank God I live in Hawaii where this is a culture here. There's holistic modalities, there's wellness clinics, there's workshops, and there's people that practice alternative medicines here. So I had this huge landscape to dive into and learned breath work and meditation and came back home to plant medicine. But it is truly one of the things that completely changed my life. And then watching so many clients and people that went from curious and very sick to now free and
Uh,
and back to feeling like themselves again. It's just so incredible when you have a client that's like, I have my joy back.
yeah.
I feel like myself for the first time since I was a little kid. I'm singing, I'm dancing, I have my joy back. And yeah, you've watched it unlock. You have been a facilitator at these places in Mexico, and then you were moving to a space in Denver where you're also going to be holding space and facilitating these journeys for people. And it's just the beginning. I'm really excited to see where your life opens up from here and others through this medicine.
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's very exciting. Like sometimes I'm like, is this a dream? Is this actually
I
happening? Where
know.
like the laws are changing and I'm in this
Yeah.
space and I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this work. Like what a blessing. What an absolute blessing.
I know it really is because when we first started working on your book, which we'll start talking about now, um, we were a little bit unsure about bringing this up and speaking about it.
Yeah.
That was 6 months ago. Just from that time to now, there has been a significant shift with people who were completely closed off to even having a conversation about this, being curious, but now we're seeing it open up into a form of medicine that's being offered. So let's segue to that and start. You are writing this magical book that speaks about basically everything we're talking about during this conversation. But let's talk about your book, the title of it. What's the topic?
Well, so the tentative title is Medical Meets Mystical, Evidence-Based Woo-Woo for Mind, Body, Health. And that came from, it came as a joke because I had a client who she was very adamant that she was against the woo. She didn't want any woo,
Yeah.
and so I said one day, I said, listen, all of my woo woo is evidence based. And then she just started laughing. She's like, okay, evidence based woo woo. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of funny when you say it like that. But it's true because a lot of the quote unquote woo woo now it has been scientifically proven,
Yeah.
and so I will only introduce the evidence based, scientifically proven, formerly known as woo woo stuff.
Bring
So,
the woo, y'all.
so it's like things that used to be like hippie stuff, it's not anymore. And now it's just actually evidence-based science.
Right.
And of course, it hasn't been incorporated into conventional medicine yet because things take time, but it's now for a lot of it, the science is undeniable.
Yeah.
So that's the title of the book. And so it really is just like you said, everything we just talked about, like starting from the basics, starting with whole foods, with good nutrition, with getting rest, physical activity, tapping back into your center, reducing all of those distractions, like trying to lead a life that is more aligned with what humans are supposed to be doing. We have become
Absolutely.
so far removed from that. Like our lives are completely artificial. Everything around us is artificial. The food we eat is artificial. Like we're so detached from what our ancestors were doing, and so we're not spending any time outdoors.
Yeah.
So no wonder we're all getting sick. No wonder we're all dissatisfied with life. No wonder we're all disconnected and out of balance
Mm.
because we're not supposed to be living this way. So the book is kind of just like a reminder. That's what all it is. It's just a reminder
Yeah.
that like, hey, if we spend more time outside, if we start eating more vegetables, if we start connecting with each other, if we start practicing gratitude, if we start tapping back into our center and remembering our values and what's important to us, and focusing on that, like what's really important, and not that new car that you want to get or that new pair of shoes, whatever it is. I mean, I'm not criticizing. You
Right.
want that new pair of shoes, fine. But, it's like, is that really as important as bringing more joy into your life? Bringing more connection to your life and meaning and purpose. And so it's really just kind of a reminder, like I said, of like going back to the basics and what's really important as a human being. And I feel like it is our responsibility, each and every person's individual responsibility for healing. We
Yeah.
cannot rely on other people or medicines or protocols or our doctor. We cannot rely on that because really we're the ones who know what we need to heal, and we can figure that out if we actually focus on it. And so to focus on that healing that's kind of one of the things the book introduces, is like how to actually start that process. And it's kind of just a little gentle guide. It's, I don't want to make it preachy.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of education, of course, in there as well, but it's like, this is what has worked for me. This is what has worked for my clients. These are some of the tools that we use. Here you go. Take what you need and see what works for you and apply it to your life. And hopefully by the end, you have a lot more clarity on how to move forward to be able to bring more purpose, meaning, and joy into your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I was getting back into your manuscript and just realizing how powerful it is. And I think you have written it so beautifully. Sometimes as medical professionals, it's hard for us to write in a way that allows people to understand that may not have a medical background, but you've written it in such a way that it's readable, it's digestible, it's understandable. You know, somebody that may not have knowledge of some of this terminology or this world, who's new to this world, you've explained things really beautifully. So it's such a great book. I can't wait for us to get it out there. I've also watched you completely blossom since you've been in my Inspired Author program. And I know so much of that is just the expansion that's happened naturally from the work that you've been doing for so long and all those seeds that you planted so long ago finally blooming. But I do want to know how the writing process has, do you feel like it's changed you, opened you up, or any insights that you've gotten through writing the book?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of power in putting things to words. You know, these are concepts that are just kind of living in my mind and living in my heart. But when you actually put it down into words and imagine that there's going to be people reading these words, it's like I feel like I'm speaking to people.
Yeah.
And by getting that out there, there is something really powerful about it, and it's like I feel like I believe more in what it is that I'm doing as
Yeah.
a result. You know, it's like, well, this is my work. This is what I'm doing. This is my purpose.
Yeah.
And here I am writing it down. You know, it's like I'm writing down my purpose. Like this is my life's mission. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's I feel so blessed to be able to have found my life's work, to be able to have found my life's mission, because I remember once upon a time not having any freaking clue what the hell I wanted to do with my life, you know? Like
Yeah.
just floating around trying to like pick up things here and there, like let me try this and let me try that. And thank goodness I tried it, because I have so many crazy experiences and so many random jobs that I've had in my life and so many places that I've been. So I'm so grateful for all of that exploration, for that exploratory period, you know, which it was the first half of my life. Um, but now with all that exploration, I feel like I finally reached a point where it's like I know what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And of course, it's probably going to take little divergent paths here and there, but I do know the basic stuff, and the basic is that I want to serve others. You know, I want to help others live a beautiful, healthy life. This is it's a passion of mine, you know, and I want to do it in a way that is not part of the traditional healthcare system.
Right.
Because I don't think we quite have gotten there yet in conventional medicine. So by writing this book, it's almost like sealing the deal in a way. You know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, here it is. I'm putting it out there in black and white. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you mentioned that too, because I do feel that I've seen this unfolding in you since we've been working together. Just a little bit more confidence, a little bit more assurance in who you are and what you've done and your street cred. I've just kind of watched you blossom and get a little bit more confident in what you do. I've also watched you realize like parts of yourself that want more expansion. So I'm curious, like, do you feel that you'd be in this place if you hadn't unlocked certain things through the writing process?
That's a good question. I think the writing process has helped me with reflection, and I think reflection is always really important as part of your personal growth. So I think that naturally, whether it was conscious or unconscious, I think that I did grow as a result of the writing process because there's a certain amount of reflection involved. And, you know, and we've stretched it out, right? Like I remember I had all these goals, like I'm going to get it done by this date and have it published by this date. And then it became, oh, well, actually, let's move it to this date. And it's still not quite done. But I've made so much progress, Emily. I'm so happy with it, actually. I worked on it a lot over the weekend. So it's been, you know, like you mentioned, 6 months, around that amount of time that I've been working on it. And yes, so much has changed in those 6 months. So it's really given me a new perspective on how much can actually change in 6 months. You know, it doesn't sound like a really long time. But when I look back to 6 months ago, I feel like I'm in a completely different place
You
in a
are.
way.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, and I think that's really important not to keep talking about the program, but that is where I want people to understand that writing is so healing and it's so self-actualizing to be able to sit with ourselves and sit with our stories. I was part of a program that was like that, but these quick fixes, these 5 steps, 90 days to be a published author, 3-week program that comes from such a masculine energy. And absolutely, you can do this. And absolutely, we did have like these goals, but you weren't through those with those stories yet. Your story is unfolding as it should. And the insights that you're getting from that book and those downloads that you're getting to put in the book are coming to you, they're divinely given. It's not just a message that you're not just writing a book to be a published author, you're writing a book so that you can spread your mission, your education, and impact a little bit further. So, honoring where you're at in this journey, because the writing process is so healing, it's just part of your healing process, and just honoring where you're at. And maybe you didn't make your deadline. I think that's a really great point to bring up. A lot of people don't, and a lot of people work faster. I had one author finish in 3 sessions in 10 days.
Wow.
She was a published author in less than a month,
Wow.
because she had birthed this story.
Right.
And she just, once she unlocked it, it was just ready to go, but some people it takes a little bit longer than that, and that's totally fine too, because you've got this beautiful book at the end of it. So, all right, love. Well, tell us what you're working on. Tell us where we can find you. Where are you hanging out? We've got listeners that are probably going to want to be in Anna's world after this conversation. So how can we find you?
Well, I'm on all the socials. So I'm on Instagram at annademarais.rn. And so that's like my more hormone kind of stuff. And then if you want to go with the more woo-woo kind of stuff, I have another account which is at Anna Mizzou. I'm also on Facebook with my first and last name. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I'm on Substack too occasionally.
Such a good writer, y'all.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, there's lots of stuff coming up. I mean, right now I am, like I mentioned, I am working on getting licensed in Colorado. And so I've got lots of travel going on in the next month or so to try to get all of that intensives and practicums and all the official stuff done for that. But then I'm going to start giving workshops again, and I do have some retreats coming up too. In August, I'm co-facilitating or co-leading, I don't know what you want to call it, a group into the Amazon, which is very, very exciting. I'm so excited. So
That's
excited.
amazing.
Yeah, so we have been invited by a page from the Huni Queen people in the Amazon, and we've been invited to his spiritual center to partake in the jungle medicines, to partake in all of their medicines and all their traditions, and coexist for a week there. And then after that, we're going to be going to Salvador de Bahia, which is the home of like capoeira and Afro-Brazilian music and beautiful beaches. So yeah, because I'm just like because after the Amazon, after like sleeping in these rustic rustic accommodations and listening to like the sounds of the jungle, and going through all the things that we're going to be going through with all these medicines, we're going to want to be integrating on a beach somewhere. So that's where that's planned out like that. So that's happening in August, and so we do have spaces left for that. So if anybody wants to come, to reach out to me, we can talk about that. Yeah. And then in October, I'm co-facilitating a psilocybin retreat, a deep healing retreat in Mexico. So yeah, lots of stuff coming up and stuff in between that I'm sure I'll throw in here and there. But if we connect on social media, then you'll be able to see what I'm up to. And I love talking to people, I love connecting with people. So if you are a listener, like, please reach out, because I just love, connection is everything.
Yeah, it really is. All right, love. Well, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom, your honesty, your light to today's conversation. Your journey is such a powerful reminder that healing and transformation are possible when we slow down, when we tune in and we trust the process. To our listeners, if you're feeling the pull to write your story, let this be your sign. You don't have to do it alone. With the right support, structure, and sacred space, you can bring your vision to life, and it might just change everything. Anna, I love you. Thank you for being here today.
Love you. Thank you.